Hi, I'm Simon. This is Simon. And we're not from Sheffield. We're actually from 7 miles that way in Chesterfield. And we run Things Chesterfield, and we've set up an IoT community. The whole thing for us spins out of a community hub that we started a few years ago now, which we started as a digital social enterprise gathering place to host the first digital meetup for our town. And it's a social enterprise, and we actually met there, at a digital meetup at the space that we created as a co-work space to create social change, to create digitally enabled environmental improvements. We've got sort of different histories in this.
Yeah. So my background was earthquake prediction research, and I did a lot of field studies, so I got a sense for how you manage collecting data remotely over periods of time.
Yeah, and I worked 15 years for the Environment Agency running the Technology Innovation Programme, and then went into doing community work and starting community hubs and stuff like that. So, how do you click these things on? Have you got to click?
Sorry,
yeah, that's great. So basically, we spent the last year and a bit now sort of like looking at the different types of air pollution sensors that are available, and we wanted to make something that was suitable for a specific market, which was local communities, but not as a community project, so not quite the same thing, but local community monitoring that could be bought en masse by councils. So affordable, low-cost monitoring, but not in a drain pipe, in a roadside container that could then be deployed as a much wider scope of a network to put in between AURN sensors and the higher stuff, but for a specific paid market. And we're generating a social enterprise here, not a community project. So we're in between you and pizza, so I'm not going to sort of say again why air pollution is important. But the key thing is that sources of pollution are radically changing. The school runs that we have, they're quite dynamic. Our council is mainly still using NO2 tubes, and we're having to have a conversation with them about legality is not the only thing that's important here. Whether you're legally compliant does not mean that your population is safe. If you have an empty bypass and you're averaging that out with a rush hour bypass that's backed up for a couple of miles, then that's really not going to help to understand the impact on population health. The second thing that's worth bringing out is that communities feel powerless in this. One of the things that I did at the Environment Agency was to run the open data programme, so we gave away things like the LiDAR national database that's being used in a lot of this stuff for modelling. And yet, most air pollution data is currently still inaccessible. Lufthansa have made a huge stride on this, but still, there's not highly granular data available to most communities. And councils in many areas, particularly in Derbyshire where we're at, they're seen as the data gatherers, and they really haven't got time to anymore. They're not really interested in the collaboration much of the time, because the moment you gather data, it forces you to take action, which you haven't got the money to do. So communities, that's very much flipping, from councils being a data gatherer to councils being an enabler of communities being a data gatherer. So this is the one monitoring station that is in North Derbyshire, so half of a county. It has a background sensor about a mile from there, just to sort of calibrate it. And to put that in, including sort of purchase the building plot, cost them around about 70 grand. No wonder they can't do another one.
Where is it?
It's on the A619 going west of the town centre. It's not actually one of the areas that's most polluted. But hey, it's 5 miles as the crow flies from the air quality management area in our town. I mean, Chesterfield is a sixth of the size of Sheffield. got 105,000 people. It has an air quality management area that's 5 miles from this and incorporates 8 houses. So you can see the need for action, really. And you know, we're left sort of saying, okay, well, this is great. You know, sort of there's Urban Flows Observatory, there's lots of other stuff here going on, but it's not going to reach a town of 105,000 people 7 miles down the road. So we felt the need to take action a little bit here. And so what we've created is a startup to sort of create some new technology. So what we wanted was small battery-powered sensors, and we wanted things that could be extremely small, extremely low power. So we didn't start with some of the reference things that were already on there. We created our own. So Simon's got some things here.
So, like a lot of us, we started looking at microcontrollers as a way of actually miniaturizing this, but also looking at ways that we could create things which were both easy to build and also with low power, which is a very key requirement, because these things need to sit in the field, active nodes, picking up data for months or years at a time. So this is always a consideration, and miniaturizing and using this sort of device helps us to do that.
Yeah, so this particular technology, that is connected to the LoRaWAN network. We've got 5 stations that cover our town as an infrastructure network, similar to the Things Network Sheffield. This is, you know, if we plugged it in, that would be a live station. That is a microcontroller complete with LoRaWAN radio.
And the sensors would connect into that.
Yeah, so we're looking at a sensor that's roughly the size of
that size.
That.
Yeah.
So we're looking at something fairly small. We've got the tech all working now, and we're currently building housings, basically. And we want them. We want them specifically to mount onto lampposts. You know, so we want something a lot smaller than a drain pipe size, so that it can actually fit onto street posts without being vandalised. And we also, one of the things we're also looking at was cycle mounting as well. So this particular thing is GPS enabled, so we can cycle them around town. So we identified a market gap, and then if you want to,
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, it's okay. So yeah, we were just aware, thinking as a community about many other use cases beyond the air quality thing that would be enabled by a LoRaWAN network, and this kind of steered us into choosing that as a technology for our air quality monitors. We expect these days that there's Wi-Fi and internet connection everywhere, but actually in practice there's configuration issues to consider even if they do exist, and actually if there isn't a Wi-Fi connection, how do you get your data back across the internet? And that's what LoRaWAN offers us the capability of doing. As Simon said, we've now deployed a network of 5 gateways with another partner across Chesterfield, and I'd say about 70% of the town could be enabled at the moment with LoRaWAN. I think the other thing that was a consideration is the amount of time it takes to configure and deploy things, and that is another benefit. Using a part of the LoRaWAN specification, which is called over-the-air authentication, these things, you turn them on, if they can find a gateway locally, the data just starts flowing. There is no configuration, and that was quite a key selling point for us.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to put out small, redeployable or portable sensors. Our initial thing is that we've got sort of pilot units that we're putting out with the college and with the public health team in Derbyshire. Those are going to be battery powered. We kind of recognise that we're going to have a limited lifespan on those batteries, but we're using high capacity lithium batteries. And we're at the moment looking at how we can power the sensors. The boards take next to nothing. The sensors are our issue for power. So we're looking at sort of solar infrastructure that will just generate just enough to power the sensors. the boards will look after themselves.
Yeah.
We want user-friendly systems, and we want to target pollution hotspots and use that as an indicative measure that can then enable further legal monitoring. So if we turn up to the council and we say, look, you know, we have identified you have a serious pollution hotspot here, now please go in and do further monitoring, the onus is on you, then there is, you know, a changing conversation from no, there's not a problem. We specifically wanted also to involve the schools in the education process and for them to look at this kind of thing. So we've been working with a group in Derbyshire who are doing Discal codes and also using Internet of Things, and we're hoping to sort of take that forward with air pollution as well. Business model we've got at the moment, we think we can knock out a commercial housed sensor for around about 300 quid. And that's sort of, you know, with commercial packaging to fit on a street pole. We've also got a monthly subscription because, as you'll see in a moment, we've put together a dashboard to do visualization, either for a specific customer or for a town, and we want to develop school packs. And we've got certain sort of, you know, market segments that as a social enterprise we're interested in targeting. And those would split really into those who are funding the exercise, those who are participating as co-deliverers, and those who might want to be partners. So we're about to move into pilot stage, and we have something built already. So I'd quite like to show you it actually. So if I can just hit that random button, hopefully it works. Fingers crossed. Oh, it's wanting me to log in again, sorry. This is worked, didn't it?
Yeah. Just whilst that's been set up, just to explain, we're measuring obviously the particulates. We're also measuring volatile organic components. So we've got a sensor which is the MICS 6184. It will measure ammonia, NOx type gases, and carbon monoxide. And also measuring air pressure, temperature, and I think that's it. Is that working?
It says connecting to base unit. Yeah, there we go. There we are. Right. So this is a dashboard of data we collected about a week ago, and it was interesting because it was right in the middle of the high period. What we've got here is an interactive dashboard where we can look at periods of time and zoom in on them and say, okay, well, we're interested in what's happening just then, and then everything moves in averages.
So it's built using the Grafana, I think, that
Yeah.
you've been using. It's a very useful tool for developing these. Yeah, it's
We've
great.
built a multi-site dashboard here. So here we've got two centres on this dashboard. One in the middle of Chesterfield, as you can see, which is currently, one in the middle of Chesterfield, and the other one on the outskirts of Chesterfield here. Now, both of these at the time were registering, you know, reasonable air pollution levels. We're graphing here volatile gases, as you mentioned before, using the mix sensor. We're gathering fuel gases, butane and methane, and we're also gathering particulates from 0.1 through 2.5 into PM10s. And we can zoom in and look at sections of those. So if I want to look at some of these spikes here, I can happily zoom in and look at what was happening at those times and say, okay, you know, sort of bear in mind that each of these is a day, so I'm zooming in on a particular day. I'm saying what happened on that day. We had a serious spike at that time of day, so and everything expands out. So it enables us to look at specific circumstances that are happening. So that's where we've got to so far, and we're interested in further contributions, collaborations, discussions, all that kind of stuff, and we'll be carrying on doing it down 7 miles down the road in Derbyshire.
Thank you.